At the back, is that all right? Thank you very much, Johnny, for organising this wonderful event, and it's a great pleasure and privilege for me to be the official host here. When I went back to Poland for the first time in 1983, March of 1983, immediately after Stan Wojenny, when Yuri Andropov was the General Secretary of the Communist Party in the Soviet Union and Wojciech Jaruzelski was the dictator of Poland, I sat with my aunt who recounted the story that Jan Kawczynski, the brother of my grandfather, hid Jewish friends and neighbours on his estate. And one day he was coming back and his neighbour stopped him and said, don't go back, the Germans have surrounded your farm. And he said, I have to go back because my wife and daughter are there. And when he went back, the Germans made him, first of all, take off his officer's boots, they made him dig a grave, and they made him watch as they shot his 12-year-old daughter, then they shot his wife, then they shot him. And his crime was helping and protecting Jewish friends and neighbours. And the reason that is so difficult for me to contemplate and evaluate is because I speak to you as the father of a 12-year-old daughter, Alexis, who I take every year to Poland. This will be our 6th holiday in the row now to Sopot, so that she understands Poland and Polish culture. To those of you in this room who are fathers, you will recognize with me how important that relationship that we have with our daughters. I think most of the fathers in this room would quite happily give up their lives to protect their daughters. The relationship and love that a father has to his daughter is, of course, indescribable. So it was a very counterintuitive thing that Jan Kawczynski did. Poland was the only country in occupied Europe where there was the death penalty for helping Jewish people. And so many Poles knew that they were taking the risk, not just with their own lives, but also potentially sacrificing their children in the process of helping their Jewish friends and neighbours. This story was said to me in 1983, and it became very deeply embedded in my psyche, and I never spoke about it until Johnny Daniels invited me to his home for a kosher meal. It was the first time in my life that I've been around a table having a kosher meal, and I think I was the only non-Jewish person in that dining room. And being surrounded with Johnny's friends, suddenly that story, which was said to me over 30 years ago, came to the fore of my mind, and I recounted it. Johnny then asked me repeatedly for the next year or so to give him more details. And like so many other Poles, I refused. He kept coming back to me over and over again, telephone calls, emails, letters, please give us more information, we want to investigate this and make sure your family is recognized. But I refused for over a year, because many Poles, we celebrate and cherish what our families did and their sacrifices, but we're very reticent about raking these things up and going through the experiences again. But anyway, after a year of pestering me, I relented and I gave him the story, and he investigated, and it ended up in my family being acknowledged at the Warsaw Zoo at a ceremony with Mr. Morawiecki and Prezes Kawczynski and others were there. So we celebrate the contribution of Poles and Christians who gave the ultimate sacrifice to protect their Jewish friends and neighbours. And just this morning, when I was having my Polish lesson with my Polish teacher, Mrs. Wątróbska, who was sitting there. Please stand up, Mrs. Wątróbska. I go through torture twice a week with my Polish lessons. It's the most difficult language in the world to learn, but she's very patient with me, Mrs. von Trubska. But talking to Mrs. von Trubska, she told me the story that her mother was taking food and to the forest to help Jewish friends and neighbours who are hiding in the forest. And of course, Mrs. von Trubska and her family haven't been acknowledged. I'm lucky because as a Member of Parliament, Johnny got to know me and my family has been recognised. But there are millions of Polish families, hundreds of thousands of Polish families like Mrs. von Trubska's family, who helped their Jewish friends and neighbours, but as yet nobody knows about the sacrifices and the dangers that they got into in order to help their Jewish friends and neighbours. What Johnny has given me is something very special. He has given me the ability and the encouragement, the courage and the fortitude to start talking about these things with my daughter, Alexis, because it is so important that we share with them the extraordinary sacrifices that our ancestors went through and warn them of the potential consequences for their generation if good people don't stand up against evil. I'm absolutely shocked and horrified that in this country today, in the United Kingdom, we still have anti-Semitic comments and we have anti-Semitic crimes. It's quite breathtaking, actually, when you think about it, that in this day and age, this sort of thing could still continue. And we must always share with the next generation the importance of standing up against anti-Semitism. So thank you, Johnny, for that very much. And I've just come here really today to support you and everything that you do in order to bring Jews and Poles together. And I will end by saying this, and I'm glad this is being recorded, but I want to have a go at the BBC, which is one of my favourite hobby horses. I have a file that thick in my office of correspondence that I have entered into with the British Broadcasting Corporation, always trying to correct their analysis when they refer to Polish death camps. There is no such thing as a Polish death camp. These were concentration camps set up by the Germans, run by the Germans, in a German-occupied Poland. And I think it's very, very important for the BBC and others, when they are making references to what happened during the Second World War, to ensure that they get their facts straight. Because we in Poland, I say, the Poles are very, very proud of the resistance and the bravery that they showed during the war, standing up to Nazi occupation. Thank you very much.